They feel unqualified, they don't apply. Their lives become a reflection of their emotions, not their decisions. The problem with that is emotions are inconsistent. They fluctuate based on external circumstances, weather, sleep, what someone said, or what didn't happen. And when your life is based on something that shifts daily, you'll never build anything stable, consistent, or powerful. The truth is, action is a greater force than emotion. Action has the power to shift your emotions, but emotions rarely push you into meaningful action. That's why the people who win in life don't move according to how they feel, they move according to what they decided. They have made up their minds that results matter more than mood. The world doesn't pay you for how you feel, it rewards you for what you do. And what you do consistently, not occasionally, is what shapes your reality. People will say, I'm just not motivated, as if that's a good reason to sit still. Motivation is a luxury. It's great when it's there, but it's not necessary to act. Champions operate even in the absence of motivation. They act based on principle, not on passion. Passion can fade and enthusiasm can be drained, but principles are unshakable. When you move based on principle, when you act because it's necessary, not because it's easy, you separate yourself from the crowd. The average person waits for inspiration. They hope that a podcast, a sermon, or a video will light a fire in them that will somehow make them move. But the ones who rise to the top don't wait to be lit, they strike the match themselves. They understand that feelings are followers, not leaders. If you want your feelings to catch up, you have to move first. And many times, what you feel after taking action is completely different from what you felt before. When you force yourself to take that first uncomfortable step, you begin to shift your state. Momentum starts building, confidence increases, clarity sharpens, energy rises, but none of that happens until you move. It's the motion that produces the emotion. Sitting still and waiting for a better feeling to come along is a guaranteed way to stay stuck. It's not about lying to yourself or pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that what you do next matters more than how you feel right now. The successful understand that their destiny doesn't care about their mood. Their vision isn't waiting on their vibe to be right, it's waiting on execution. Greatness doesn't come dressed in comfort, it comes wrapped in responsibility. The responsibility to show up when it's inconvenient, to keep going when you're drained, to stay focused when distractions call. And that kind of resilience only comes from making a decision to value action above emotion. When you act in spite of emotion, you begin to master your own psychology. You're no longer a slave to impulse. You don't need external validation to move. You stop negotiating with your lesser self. And the more you act, the stronger you get. That strength isn't physical, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's the kind of strength that makes people ask, how do they keep going? The answer is simple. They've trained themselves to act regardless of how they feel. Your brain loves familiarity. It wants to protect you from discomfort. It will offer every excuse under the sun to keep you from taking action. It will rationalize laziness and dress it up as self-care. It will label fear as wisdom. But once you've decided that your actions will lead your life, not your feelings, you begin to break out of that mental prison. You stop entertaining every thought, and you start disciplining your mind to align with your goals. There's power in doing what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. You start building trust with yourself. When you say you're going to do something and you actually follow through, your self-respect rises. You stop needing hype, motivation, or applause from others. The results become the reward. The growth becomes addictive. The discipline becomes your edge. And slowly but surely you become unstoppable. Not because you never felt weak, but because you never let those feelings dictate your behavior. This is how real transformation begins. Not with a spark of emotion, but with a decision to act. A commitment to move. A refusal to be ruled by internal storms. The decision to do what's hard, what's right, and what's required, until your life reflects the level you were always called to walk in. Comfort is seductive. It whispers to you that you're okay where you are, that there's no need to stretch, no need to grow, no need to change. It gives you just enough satisfaction to keep you from reaching for more. Comfort tells you that tomorrow is fine, that now is not the time, and that what you have is already good enough. It convinces you that the pain of discipline is worse than the pain of regret, and so you settle, not because you have to, but because you've accepted the illusion that ease is a reward. The most dangerous place a person can live is not in poverty, not in failure, but in comfort. Comfort will lull you into routines that numb your hunger. You'll wake up every day going through the motions, calling it life, when really you're just surviving in a state of stagnation. There's no real urgency, no fire, no sense of pursuit. You begin to shrink your goals to fit your current lifestyle instead of stretching your lifestyle to meet your God-given potential. And before you realize it, you're years deep into a version of life you never really chose. It just slowly happened to you. Progress requires pressure. It demands discomfort. Growth never comes without resistance. Think of a seed pushing through soil. Think of a body being strengthened under weight. Think of a mind being sharpened by adversity. Every form of advancement has a cost, and that cost is almost always paid in the currency of discomfort. But most people avoid pressure at all costs, and in doing so, they avoid their own evolution. They want change without challenge. They want promotion without process. When you become too comfortable, you lose your edge. You stop being innovative. You stop taking risks. You stop dreaming boldly. Comfort leads to complacency, and complacency is where potential goes to die. You can have talent, vision, even opportunity, but if comfort has its grip on you, none of that will matter. You'll stay in jobs that underpay you, relationships that don't challenge you, and environments that no longer serve you, all because they're familiar. And familiarity becomes the silent killer of progress. What makes comfort so dangerous is how good it feels in the moment. It doesn't feel destructive. In fact, it feels safe, warm, predictable. But what's predictable is rarely powerful, and what's easy is rarely excellent. Comfort tells you to avoid the unknown, to stay on the path you know, to repeat what's worked before. But progress lives in the unknown. Success is built in unfamiliar territory. Your next level isn't found in what you've mastered, it's found in what you're still afraid to try. Many people confuse peace with comfort. They assume if they're not being stretched, that must be a sign they're in alignment. But there's a difference between inner peace and external ease. Peace is knowing you're on the right path even when it's hard. Comfort is staying on the wrong path because it's easy. Peace requires you to align with purpose. Comfort requires you to align with convenience. And convenience has never produced greatness. Purpose always costs you something. It demands effort, sacrifice, and discomfort. When you start to pursue something greater, comfort will show up dressed as logic. It will sound reasonable. It will say things like, you don't want to burn out, or maybe you should wait until things settle down. It will remind you of your past failures. It will exaggerate your current limitations. It will feed you just enough doubt to keep you still. And if you listen long enough, it will convince you that standing still is safer than moving forward. But the truth is, standing still is not safe. It's slow death to your calling. The people who break barriers, disrupt industries, shift culture, and leave legacies, they didn't get there by doing what was comfortable. They said yes to pressure. They leaned into discomfort. They embraced the struggle because they understood it was the only path to power. You'll never meet a high achiever who tells you they coasted their way to the top. Every elevation required them to sacrifice something familiar in order to gain something greater. Comfort also isolates you from urgency. When you're too comfortable, you stop feeling the need to act. You delay decisions, you hesitate on opportunities, and you convince yourself there's always more time. But time doesn't wait for comfort. It passes you by. Seasons shift, doors close, opportunities move on to someone else who is willing to be uncomfortable enough to answer the call. And one of the most heartbreaking truths is realizing you were capable, but you chose comfort over calling. If you want to grow, if you want to build something meaningful, if you want to live with purpose, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. That means doing what scares you, saying yes before you're ready, moving before it makes sense, and staying committed when it hurts. Discomfort is not your enemy, it's your invitation. It's a signal that something greater is available, but it's going to cost you the ease that you've become addicted to. Fear is one of the most misunderstood emotions in the human experience. Most people treat fear as a wall, something to avoid, something that signals danger, something that says, stop here, this is where it ends. But fear wasn't designed to stop you, it was designed to direct you. It's a signal, a spotlight, a neon arrow pointing toward the very thing you're meant to confront. Fear doesn't show up to paralyze you, it shows up to reveal where your next level lives. When you feel fear rise in your chest, that's not a message to retreat, it's a message to lean in. The presence of fear doesn't mean you're off course. Often it means you're finally on the right path. The very fact that fear showed up means you've left the territory of the familiar. You've stepped outside your comfort zone. You're standing on the edge of growth, and fear is trying to decide whether it can still control you in this new place. That's where the battle is, not with the fear itself, but with your reaction to it. People give fear too much power because they mistake it for truth. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean there's actual danger. Fear isn't always about protection, it's about perception. It's your mind projecting uncertainty and your imagination exaggerating what could go wrong. But rarely do the worst case scenarios we fear ever come true. Fear is loud, but that doesn't make it accurate. And when you begin to understand that fear is a signal and not a sentence, you can choose to respond with courage instead of retreat. The biggest shifts in life happen when you do the very thing that scares you. Starting the business, speaking in front of people, asking for the opportunity, walking away from what no longer serves you. These are all fear-filled moments. But on the other side of those moments is clarity, strength, and expansion. Most people never get to the other side because they misread fear as a stop sign. They say things like, this must not be the right time, or maybe it's not meant to be, not realizing those thoughts are just fear dressed in logic. Fear often shows up strongest when you're closest to something meaningful. Right before the breakthrough, the fear grows louder. It tries to convince you to go back to what's familiar, to what's safe, to what's easy. But safety doesn't produce transformation. The fact that you're afraid is often proof that the move you're about to make actually matters. Fear is loudest at the edge of change, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're finally doing something that counts. The people who rise above average are not the ones who never feel fear. They are the ones who move forward in spite of it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision that something else matters more. It's when your purpose becomes louder than your panic. It's when your desire to fulfill the vision outweighs your desire to protect your pride. Courage is built by repeatedly walking into fearful situations and realizing that you survived, you grew, and you're stronger now because of it. Fear will always try to anchor you to your past. It will remind you of every failure, every rejection, every moment that didn't go how you hoped. It will use your history as a reason not to create a new future. But your past is not a prophecy, it's a reference point. Fear wants to limit you to what you've already seen, but vision calls you into what's never been done. The more you honor fear as truth, the more you shrink your life to fit within its limits. Every great leader, every world changer, every groundbreaker has faced fear. The difference is they saw it for what it was, a test, not a termination. A moment of resistance designed to refine their resolve. They used fear as feedback. They used it to expose their weakness and build their strength. Fear became fuel, not as a warning to stop, but as confirmation that they were pressing into something meaningful. You don't need to eliminate fear to move. You need to reframe it. You need to ask, why is this fear showing up right now? And what does it say about the size of the opportunity on the other side? Fear is often a mirror reflecting your highest calling. It shows up when you're nearing the edge of who you've been and stepping into who you're meant to become. It can't follow you into your future, so it makes one last attempt to pull you back into the old version of yourself. Fear will knock, but you decide whether or not to let it in. It may walk beside you, but it doesn't get to lead. It may whisper lies, but you don't have to believe them. Every time you act in the presence of fear, you shrink its power. You teach your body, your mind, and your spirit that fear is not your ruler, it's just background noise. You build a track record of courage that becomes stronger than your doubt, and each brave step forward becomes another brick in the foundation of your freedom. Momentum is not something that randomly appears. It doesn't fall out of the sky. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Momentum is a direct result of movement, intentional, repeated, consistent movement. Too many people sit still, waiting for a sign, waiting for motivation, waiting for someone to give them permission. But life doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards boldness. If you want things to change, if you want your life to speed up, elevate, accelerate, you have to initiate the motion that creates that momentum. One of the biggest lies people believe is that they need to feel ready before they begin. But readiness is not a prerequisite for progress. It's a result of it. You don't get clarity by standing still. You get clarity by moving forward. Even if you don't know the full plan, take the next step. Make the call, write the idea down, take the risk. Forward movement, no matter how small, begins to stir up energy. That energy fuels action, and that action builds momentum. Waiting is a passive state, and passivity kills progress. While you're waiting for the perfect moment, someone else is building, learning, evolving. They're failing forward. They're gaining insight through experience. And the longer you stay still, the heavier your dreams begin to feel. Inaction breeds doubt. It feeds fear. It creates mental clutter and emotional fatigue. But movement clears the fog. It silences overthinking. It gives you feedback. It shows you what works, what doesn't, and what needs to shift. You don't have to see the entire staircase. Just take the first step. Most people think they need a detailed map, but what they really need is momentum. Movement creates opportunities you can't see from a standstill. You meet people, you find new paths, you uncover solutions. Doors open when you knock, not when you stare at them. Nothing magical happens while you're waiting for the perfect alignment of circumstances. The magic happens in motion. The difference between the average and the extraordinary is that the extraordinary keep moving. They don't wait for motivation to strike, they create it through movement. They understand that motivation often comes after action, not before it. You go to the gym even when you don't feel like it, and halfway through, energy kicks in. You write the first sentence, and then ideas start flowing. You pick up the phone, and suddenly the deal feels possible. Movement precedes motivation. Momentum is not reserved for the chosen few. It's available to anyone who decides to move. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be fully equipped. You just have to be willing to move consistently in the direction of your goals. Every small action compounds. Every choice to show up, speak up, try again, it adds weight to your forward progress. It might feel slow at first, like pushing a heavy boulder uphill, but eventually that boulder starts rolling. And when it does, everything changes. Too many people spend their lives waiting for certainty. But certainty is not the foundation of success. Courage is. The more you move, the more confident you become. You start building evidence that you can handle what comes. You start trusting your ability to adapt, to overcome, to navigate challenges. You no longer need every answer up front because you've proven to yourself that you'll figure it out in motion. That's how self-belief is built, not through theory, but through doing. Movement also changes your identity. When you act like a leader, you start thinking like a leader. When you behave like a creator, you start believing you are one. Identity is not static, it's shaped by behavior. And the more you move in alignment with the person you want to become, the more you internalize that version of yourself. You're not faking it until you make it, you're moving until it manifests. That's how momentum transforms you from the inside out. Even your failures feed momentum if you're moving. Because when you move and mess up, you learn, you grow, you pivot, you adapt. Failure in motion is far more valuable than success in theory. Every action you take gives you a new data point. And that information, even when it comes through disappointment, helps you sharpen your aim. You're not stuck, you're being sculpted, you're gaining traction, and traction is more valuable than perfection. Motion has a voice. It speaks louder than doubt, louder than fear, louder than critics. When you move, you begin to silence the lies that kept you stuck. You prove to yourself that you're capable, resourceful, and worthy of the future you see. But none of that becomes real until you stop waiting and start walking. Momentum is yours, but only if you choose to move. There is something inside of you that was created to stretch beyond limits, to rise above average, to defy expectations. You were never designed to live small, think small, or be small. You were built to expand, to grow in vision, in strength, in influence, and in purpose. There is nothing about your makeup that was intended for shrinkage. But somewhere along the way, life convinced you that shrinking was safer. You were taught to tone yourself down, to settle for less, to stay quiet, and to avoid standing out. You were told to be realistic, to play it safe, to stay within the boundaries of what's acceptable, predictable, and comfortable. But the truth is, your very existence is proof that expansion is your destiny. Look at your body, it grows. Look at your mind, it learns. Look at your spirit, it longs for more. Everything about you was engineered for forward motion. The desire for increase was hardwired into your design, not so you could boast, but so you could become the fullest expression of what you were placed on this earth to be. But too many people live like they're on the defense, always protecting, always holding back, always calculating risk instead of creating opportunity. They shrink their dreams to fit their current environment instead of expanding their environment to match their dreams. They believe the lie that playing small is humble, when in reality it's disobedience to purpose. Playing small doesn't serve the world, it doesn't inspire others, it doesn't honor the God-given capacity within you. You weren't meant to fit into the mold. You were meant to break it. You were designed to be a disruptor, not a duplicate. Expansion requires that you challenge the boundaries that culture, fear, and even your past have tried to place around you. Every time you feel that urge to shrink, to step back, to stay silent, to stay hidden, that's the exact moment you're being called to rise. It's in those moments that expansion is available, but it will never force itself on you. You have to choose it. Expansion is not a personality trait, it's a decision. It's a commitment to grow even when it's uncomfortable. It's choosing faith over fear, vision over visibility, purpose over popularity. Expanding means taking up space. It means using your voice. It means showing up fully instead of halfway. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. Alignment with your calling, alignment with your capacity, alignment with your creator who didn't put you here to dim your light just to make others comfortable. When you expand, you start living with intentionality. You stop reacting and start initiating. You stop waiting for permission and start walking in purpose. You stop shrinking to be tolerated and start expanding to be effective. You realize that influence isn't about being seen, it's about being impactful. And impact can't happen if you're hiding. The people who are called to your voice, your gift, your message, they can't find you if you keep shrinking to stay safe. The world's filled with noise, but expansion cuts through it. Expansion is clarity. It says, this is who I am, this is what I carry, and this is what I was born to do. And the more you expand, the more pressure you may feel, but pressure is a sign that you're growing. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Strength is developed under tension. Growth happens in resistance. And every time you resist the urge to shrink, you're building capacity for the next level of your life. Shrinking may feel easier, but it costs you more. It costs you opportunities. It costs you alignment. It costs you self-respect. You weren't built to fit inside someone else's box. You weren't created to tiptoe around greatness. Playing small may make others feel comfortable, but it leaves you feeling conflicted because deep down you know there's more. You feel the tension between what you're doing and what you were made for. And that tension will not leave you alone until you make the decision to expand. Expansion doesn't happen all at once. It's built step by step, choice by choice, moment by moment. Every time you show up with excellence, every time you say yes to growth, every time you stretch your mind, your skill, your capacity, you expand, you push past old limits. You prove to yourself that you're not bound by what's familiar, and you realize that what once felt like too much now feels normal. Because expansion doesn't just change your surroundings, it changes your identity. The expanded version of you already exists. It's waiting on the other side of obedience, courage, and consistency. And the journey to that version doesn't begin with applause or accolades. It begins with a decision to stop shrinking, a decision to stop apologizing for your greatness, a decision to stop editing yourself for the approval of people who were never assigned to your destiny, a decision to expand into the fullness of who you were created to become. Transformation is not something that happens by chance. It is triggered by decision. And that decision must be followed by immediate action. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled by time, it's filled by movement. People wait around thinking clarity will come if they give it enough thought, but clarity doesn't come from thinking alone. It comes from doing. The moment you take that first uncomfortable, imperfect, bold step, you activate something powerful. That moment becomes the catalyst for change, the ignition point where transformation begins to take root. Waiting is the great deceiver. It disguises itself as wisdom. It wears the mask of preparation. It speaks with the voice of logic, but underneath it all, it's hesitation. It's fear in disguise. And while you're waiting for all the stars to align, the window of opportunity begins to shrink. Immediate action doesn't mean reckless movement, it means obedient movement. It means when the vision drops in your spirit, when the idea sparks in your mind, when the conviction hits your heart, you don't wait until the feeling fades. You move while the fire is still fresh. Every transformation story begins with a decision point, but the decision alone doesn't bring change. It's the action that follows that determines whether transformation is real or just a wish. You can't think your way into a new season. You have to act your way into it. Immediate action creates momentum, and momentum carries you through the resistance that will inevitably rise. You can't avoid the resistance, but if you act fast enough, you can outrun its grip before it settles in and paralyzes your movement. The longer you wait to act, the more permission fear has to speak. Procrastination gives fear a microphone. It allows self-doubt to expand. It makes room for overthinking, perfectionism, and the addiction to certainty. But immediate action silences that noise. It doesn't give fear time to build a case. It bypasses the internal courtroom where your insecurities try to convince you to stay small. Action says, we're doing this now. And by the time fear tries to object, you've already made progress. Transformation is not reserved for the talented, it belongs to the intentional. People keep waiting for talent to carry them, but talent without movement is dormant. Action is what awakens the gift inside of you. It tests it, shapes it, sharpens it. It's in the doing that your potential is refined. You can read books, take courses, and gather information, but nothing substitutes for the transformation that comes through immediate execution. Your gift grows in real time, not in theory. There's power and urgency. Not panic, but urgency. It says, I value this moment too much to waste it. When you move immediately on an idea, you show honor to the opportunity. You prove that you're ready to steward what's been placed in your hands. You demonstrate faith, and faith is always followed by action. Even in Scripture, every miracle required movement. The water didn't part until they stepped in. The healing didn't come until they reached out. The breakthrough didn't manifest until someone moved in belief. Immediate action also forces you into alignment. You don't get to hide behind excuses when you've already made the move. Now you have to grow. You have to adapt. You have to show up with consistency. Action raises your internal standard. It brings you face to face with your own capacity. It pushes you into new environments, new mindsets, new disciplines. It demands that you rise because now you're no longer preparing for transformation, you're in it. The people who experience radical change in their lives are not the ones who knew the most. They're the ones who moved the fastest when they knew it was time. It wasn't that they had all the answers. It was that they refused to delay obedience. They understood that windows close, energy fades, and distractions grow louder the longer you wait. So they took imperfect action. They trusted that progress would make the path clearer, and as they moved, the transformation followed. Sometimes we think transformation has to be dramatic, but it often begins in small, immediate steps. Sending the email, making the call, blocking the distraction, registering for the class, saying yes to the assignment. These aren't huge world-shaking moves, but they are world-shifting moves because they shift your world, they shift your habits, your mindset, your routine. They become the foundation for lasting transformation, brick by brick, action by action. The quicker you act, the more you begin to reshape your identity. You start to see yourself as a doer, a builder, a person who follows through. Your confidence rises not because of the results alone, but because of the evidence you build within yourself. You realize that you can be trusted to move when it matters, and that realization doesn't just change your behavior, it transforms your belief.